everyone, and welcome to Dream Leapers with Harriet Cole. I'm so happy to have you with me today and our very, very special guest. We've had him on before. I've been knowing this wonderful chef for many years. I love his food, and he's come out with a new cookbook that just reading the stories and how easy a lot of the recipes are, it really makes your mouth water. Let me tell you about him. Our guest for this week is none other than the renowned American chef, Chef JJ Johnson. We call him Chef JJ. You might have seen him on TV shows such as Food Network's Chopped, Netflix's Street Food, Selena and Chef on HBO Max, and his very own show, which is now in its 5th season. It's Just Eats with Chef JJ on TV One's network, the Cleo TV, which is this fall is the 5th season. So you got to watch that too. Chef JJ is co-author of the critically acclaimed cookbook, Between Harlem and Heaven. And he just released this latest cookbook, The Simple Art of Rice, Recipes from Around the World for the Heart of Your Table. He has 3 field trip restaurants. The first is right around the corner from my house, and we eat wonderful rice dishes from there regularly. He just opened one near Columbia University. He's got so much to talk about, and we are happy to welcome Chef JJ right now.
Thank you, Harry. I appreciate all the love, and thanks for having me on your show.
Oh, absolutely. Look, you are doing it. I remember when you opened the first field trip, which, like I said, is around the corner from my house. And I remember bringing home a rice bowl, and my husband was like, well, where is this from? And George is not the easiest person to please with some food. He was like, I like this. I want more of this. So, you know, when the man is happy, this is a good thing. Why is rice so important to Chef JJ?
For me, rice was important growing up as a young kid. I used to hang out in the kitchen with my grandmother, Iris. She would be playing loud music, and that rice would hit the table. It would be paella, it would be asopao, it would be chicken and rice. It would be these beautiful Puerto Rican dishes of her heritage, that's some of my heritage. But when it came to the table as a young kid, I can remember like pulling up on my small chair to the table and watching everybody with their arms scooping rice dishes. And that was like the first touch point of remembrance or excitement or importance for rice for me. And then the second part was when I traveled to Ghana. I got, 20 years later, traveled to Ghana, and I had jollof rice in a grandma's house, and everybody was pushing and shoving to get there. And it reminded me of myself as a little kid. And that's when I started to do deep research around rice and realizing that rice for America was a cash crop. It's connected in the souls of every Black person. And I wanted to revive that culture that was lost. I've been very fortunate to do some of that through my restaurant field trip, but now I've extended that olive branch or those rice grains in the new cookbook, The Simple Art of Rice.
Well, this book is so beautiful. The Simple Art of Rice. The photographs are beautiful. The recipes, for someone who, I'm going to call myself a late bloomer to cooking, although it's not that late. I started when my daughter was born, and she's about to be 20. So 20 years of cooking is not a late bloomer anymore, right? But I didn't cook as a young person. I live in New York, so you could eat any kind of food you want and be healthy and creative. But when I started cooking, trying out different recipes was scary to me. You have to have a certain measurement and things that have lots and lots of ingredients were hard. As I look through this book, there's some of the simplest recipes in here, as well as some that are more complicated, but there are a lot of very easy recipes that don't take that long, and that I can't wait to make some of them because they have different flavors. Like you have found every kind of flavor to it's amazing, because I think people think of rice, whatever they like you mentioned your grandmother and then the grandmother in Ghana, whatever your family made, there's a particular way that you understand rice and what it tastes like. And you have gathered these recipes from everywhere. Like there's so many sources of recipes in this book. How did you collect them?
Well, first, I want people to understand rice is easy. Rice also makes your life easy, right? Because when you make a pot of rice, you're not just making 1 cup of rice. You're making 2, 3 cups of rice. And then
Okay.
you have that rice left over in your fridge. You're like, oh man, I don't know what to do with it. I'm just going to have this white rice again. But in the simple art of rice, I guide you through that where you can take your leftover rice and do fried rice. You can take your leftover rice and do rice salads, right? So I wanted to show you like there's this versatility, there's this easiness that rice can make your life easy. And
Hey,
then,
let's stick with that for a second because it's such an important point. It is not what people think.
oh,
People think,
yes, it's not,
right.
it's not. Listen,
People are
rice,
afraid to cook rice. So
no.
what makes it easy?
Well, you need the right size pot, right? Because rice doubles in size. So that's the first step. So
Okay.
I tell everybody you need a 2-quart pot to at least make 2 to 3 cups of rice because the rice grows in the pot. And if you're using one of those small incy bincy pots, the rice is bubbling over the top. The top is hard, the bottom is mushy, and you're like, oh man, I don't want rice.
Right.
And I constantly are getting these people are reaching out to me all the time. Oh, JJ, the rice is burnt on the bottom. Oh, this, oh, that. It's burnt on the bottom because you were stirring the pot. You were shaking it. You were looking at it. Rice is one of those things that want to be left alone when you cook it. So you put your rice in, you wash your rice, very important. You put your rice in the pan. You use the finger trick that I talk about in the book. It's like the JJ finger trick where you put your finger on top of the rice and you bring it to your first knuckle. And then after that, you put the top on, you put it on medium heat, and you don't have to worry about anything. Put a 25-minute timer on, and then rice allows you to cook everything else.
Huh.
But most of us are
I'm
cooking.
glad you explain that because everything you just said is what we don't normally do.
No, because you cook it like pasta, Harry. People are shaking it, stirring it.
And so you're just not supposed to do that.
No, not at all. You're supposed to just let it rock. And then when it's finished, you salt it, you fluff the rice, you put the top back on, you push it to the side for 5 minutes. Let it rest like you rest your steak or your scallops. And that's when the rest of the magic happens.
Wow. And is this true for like are there different rules for different types of rice?
I think when you start getting into like Laonese sticky rice or Filipino sticky rice or sushi rice or risotto, those things have different appliance to it. Or dishes like gumbo or jambalaya or jollof, right? But what I want people to understand is before you even get to those dishes in the book, I want you just to be able to do the perfect pot of rice. And we guide you through that, right? We bring you right there and you're like, oh, do I follow this recipe? And I tell you, you can use a finger trick or you can use this ratio guide. And most people are telling me, oh, I use a 2-to-1 ratio. My rice is coming out mushy. It's like, yeah, it's not a 2-to-1 ratio. It's really like a 1.5-ish ratio, but that's why the finger trick is so beautiful. And it really works always. People debate me in kitchens all around the world. I come in there, I use my finger trick. We put the water in, the rice goes. They're like, oh, wow. And I'm telling guys, people taller than me, shorter than me, it doesn't matter how big your hand is. It works. But also that rice has to grow. And if you don't have it in a vessel where it can grow or the steam comes out, you're hurting yourself. That's why the
rice cookers good ideas.
Rice cookers are great. I call rice cookers the new toasters, and I think that's like when you get to this next point of rice cooking, you're like, oh man, I'm in a rush. Let me just dump this rice in. Let me throw some spices in the rice cooker. Let me close the top, right? And rice cookers are okay because we could toast our bread in the oven, right? But we have a toaster, so it's the same thing. When looking at rice cookers, and what I try to tell people in the book is I make these rice packets. So if you're a rice box lover, you should have a rice cooker and you can make those same rice on your own. Spanish rice, Indian rice, Zatar rice. You can do that all on your own in your rice cooker with all those spices in your cabinet.
So I'm going to go back to something else you just mentioned because there are lots of things that people don't know about rice. And you've said so many. I just want to break some of these down. So this is another thing. When my husband saw the book, he said, oh, he's a photographer. The cover is so gorgeous. He's like, this is beautiful. Is this Chef JJ from Field Trip? Is this his book? And he says, well, he's studying about rice right now, JJ.
Really?
Yes. So the thing that whatever he's interested in, he goes all the way down the rabbit hole. So this was the thing he says, now, I know that you have to wash rice before you cook it. Does Chef JJ know that? And so you just said about washing rice. Why is that important? What is it about? Because a lot of Americans don't do that. You just put the rice in a pot and go. Why is it important health-wise to wash rice?
Well, I think on the first step, Americans they confuse. They're so used to cooking boxed rice that they're like, oh, I'm going to wash my box with the spices in it. It's like, no, that's different. Like, you got to just cook that out the box. You can't do nothing. Okay. But rice you buy needs to be rinsed the same way you rinse your carrots, the same way you wash your apples, the same way rice is grown in a field. It's grown with water. It's in irrigation. Most rice that we eat, they're flooding the land, which is a technique that you don't need to really do that much anymore. But they're doing these things. So you have to remember, like, it's getting picked, it's getting milled, it's in maybe a factory, it's getting transported. You need to wash your rice. People are like, oh man, it's dirty, right? And people are like, oh, you're washing off all the starch. It's like, no, you're not washing off the starch. You're washing off that initial starch. You know how much rice starch is in the rice? It's okay. And washing the rice allows those grains not to stick together when you're cooking it, that they'll separate like pearls. So now. And
do you wash it with anything special?
No. I see these crazy videos of people are using soap washing rice. No, don't be using it. What's going on? It's just let the water run till the water runs clear, to the rice water's clear. Then you strain it out. Then you put that in your pan, and then you put new water. You don't use that same water. What a lot of people are doing now is they're saving that water and they're using that in their hair, because the rice starch makes your hair grow. So people are using it in their hair. Yesterday, somebody told me that.
JJ.
Somebody told me that their grandmother used to give them the rice water when they were sick. She would save it and give. I mean, there's all these crazy things around the rice. But yeah, I don't put the rice water in my hair, not yet. But I do. It does. You do want to wash your rice like you do your vegetables.
Okay, so one other thing that, in this age in which we live, where many people are obsessed with weight, is rice fattening?
I think the rice that we're eating is fattening.
Okay.
Right. The rice that we're consuming on a day-to-day base is not good for us. And then when I'm saying that, that's bleached, enriched rice.
Okay.
Right. So everybody should stop buying bleached, enriched rice. Stop there. And because they're putting impurities into the rice and those things. When we start to veer away from that rice, eating black rice, eating rice that are coming from the farm, eating better for us rice, that rice has a lot of vitamins in it, a lot of nutritional value in it. Black rice has the most amino acids next to blueberries. Brown rice has the germ. I mean, even fitness trainers now are telling their clients to, if you're going home, cook a pot of rice before you come to the gym, let it stay in the pot. And that initial rice starch that makes the rice come back together is really good to build muscle. So a lot of people are veering away from rice as making you fat or overweight or obese or put your blood sugar up. It's really on the way, the consumption around the food, around the rice grain that we're consuming.
And so you have in this book photographs of and descriptions of different types of rice. So you say stay away from the bleached, enriched rice. For beginners, what are some good rices to cook with? There's a beautiful photo with all these different rices.
I think when you go in the store, jasmine rice is great. California long grain rice is great.
Okay, we see that a lot.
Yeah, we've interviewed a 4-generation family from California. when I say real basmati rice, not Tex Mati, not not Mississippi Mati. Basmati rice is good.
That's from
Um,
India, right?
yep, from India. So I mean, those things are grown the way they are, milled the way they happen to be milled, and taken care of to the best ability. I think when you get past that point, you're gonna see a lot of supermarkets changing the rice on the shelf because a lot of people, a lot of scientists are tying climate change to rice,
Wow.
and that a lot of rice that we're growing in America is putting out what's the same thing that cows put out? Oh, I'm about to say butane, but what do cows put out? Harriet, help me here.
Is it ethanol?
Ethanol. So cows put out about 25% of ethanol.
Right.
Rice puts out about 12%.
Ah,
So rice could be the change to climate change. And this has happened before. In the book we talk about this is West Africa used to produce all the white rice for the world. It sold the seeds to China. China started growing the rice. They realized they didn't need West Africa. West Africa was running out of water at a certain point to grow rice. And we're seeing that now with irrigation around rice. So not to get too geeky with you, but
no, but
those are some of the things in the
fascinating.
studies. Yeah.
Let me remind folks, this is Dream Leapers with Harriet Cole, and we are here with Chef JJ, who has this brand new, beautiful book, The Simple Art of Rice, Recipes from Around the World for the Heart of Your Table. I love that it's for the heart of your table. What made you choose that word, that image, to invoke that image of the heart of your table?
I think rice is the greatest food connector in the world. And when you're thinking about connectivity, you're thinking about emotion, you're thinking about the way your heart beats, right? And that's why we leaned in with the heart of the table. Um, and it doesn't matter where you go, rice is culture. People, you grew up with a rice dish. I grew up with a rice dish. Your daughter grew up with a rice dish, right? It just doesn't matter who you're talking to. There's a rice dish at that heart of the table that really fueled families, and I want and people to maybe dive into another heart of somebody else's table, and that's why you see so many dishes and so many flavors, is because if you're trying to understand a culture, or maybe you don't understand a culture, you can make that dish. You'll say, "Oh my goodness, this cinnamon lamb rice is really great. Why?" Or Perlu? What's this Perlu? What's JJ talking about? This? Oh, the American South. And I think you then start this. It's a conversation starter. And a lot of these dishes, I believe, will be on the Thanksgiving table, will be on the holiday tables. In addition to traditions, you're going to add a new tradition out of this book to the table.
That's nice. So let me say what the chapters are, and then we'll dig into some of them. Everyday favorites, simple dishes, perfect as sides, light and fresh, comfort food, brunch, celebration, desserts, and drinks. And I forgot about, like, yeah, rice pudding is something that a lot of, I'm from Baltimore. That's a thing in the South, in the United States. But drinks, rice drinks. What are rice drinks?
Horchata,
Ah, okay.
right? So,
Okay.
like, we've all had our. I mean, we live in New York, so we've all had our chata. But I think what we did with the book and why we chose those chapters was going back to evoking emotion versus going like, oh, this is Japanese, this is Chinese, this is Israeli, this is right. It was like, what does rice do for you emotionally?
Mhm.
And you think about, for me, when I think about rice, I'm like, okay, what's my everyday rice? What can I make every day easy? And that's where you get to the chickpeas, the curry chickpeas rice with the egg on top. Or I want to celebrate with rice. What can I celebrate? Oh, I'm gonna put gumbo at the table because gumbo is a celebration, right? So that's how we look at the book. Or there's cultures that were using rice for breakfast, right? Where you putting rice into waffles. So it also shows you the versatility of rice too, where you can have it during every meal period. Um, and you never need to leave any grain behind.
Aha. Now, just because some people may not know what horchata is, and I'm looking at this particular recipe, passion fruit horchata. Wow, that just even the title of it sounds good. But tell us what horchata is for some folks who may not know?
So horchata is basically a rice milk drink. It's something that you will find in Mexico. It's part of the Mexican culture. Um, it is, rice milk, vanilla, cinnamon sticks, a little bit of milk. It's creamy. It's something that you would see on the holiday table. Um, you soak the rice, you blend it, and then you flavor it. And I'm a big sucker for passion fruit, and I really believe when you mix that with the rice milk and the cinnamon and the sugar and the vanilla, it's great. And it's something that if you are a um, eggnog lover
Mm-hmm.
during the holiday seasons, this could be your new substitution that you could try.
Okay, that sounds great. So folks definitely get a sense of it. I'm looking through the book. Here's something that I think a lot of Southerners know, but I'm seeing here that it's from West Africa, Hoppin' John.
Oh, Hoppin' John. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Tell us about that.
Hoppin' John. I mean, we all know Hoppin' John for that time of year, right? We eat it at the table for New Year's,
Right.
to give us what luck, prosperity. But what for me, when we're digging deep research in the Hoppin' John, black eyed peas, cow peas, um, on New Year's Day with collard greens, we would eat it. The rice region around West Africa, we realized that we have another dish in the book called wake, and the wake is very similar to the Hoppin' John, which in the region of Ghana is hill rice. So you see that Hoppin' John origin was here, and then it traveled when people were sewing rice inside their clothes or braiding it in their hair. They were bringing those cow peas and everything alongside of them to the American South, to the Gullah Geechee Islands. So
That's fascinating because there's so much research in this book. I think, we think of cookbooks and sometimes it's just straight recipes. This book is filled with so many different people's stories as well as the history. Like, you have a map and you kind of take people on the way that rice traveled throughout the world and got to all these different places. And then also what you just described there. For Hoppin' John, I know the black eyed peas and rice is just a requirement. Like you are supposed to have that on New Year's Day in order to invoke good luck. You absolutely are. Who knew that it has its roots in West African tradition? That's pretty amazing. I'm looking at another recipe here. I went to the more challenging ones because I was just looking around at all of them. This one, I think you have in the celebrations chapter called Sancocho.
sancocho, yeah, sancocho.
It looks
Uh,
so pretty.
oh,
Tell us about
it's so good. It's something that you will see on a Latino's table. I really celebrate the Felice family in this one, which is my dearest friend Catherine Felice and her mother. Sancocho is a brothy substance similar. Like if you've eaten gumbo, you
it. It
would
looks
fall in
like
love. You right, but it has corn, it has yuca, it has platanos, it has traditionally guinea hen. It has all those things in it. Chicken. You simmer it, and it's delicious.
wow. And so it has a lot of ingredients. When I read you even recommend because there's so many, you might want to prepare the ingredients, get them ready the day before, right? And then you put but that makes sense because the thing is if it takes too long, then you're like, "Oh, this is hard." So you kind of have to get your mind in the mindset of it's not hard, you just have to prepare.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing when you're cooking is you need to gather your ingredients, which makes it easier for you to cook. I don't want you to be cabinet runners. I don't want you to be fridge runners going back and forth. Get all your ingredients, prep it out, and then cook. And some things are big meals, they're celebrations, so use the day before, and then the next day you cook.
Okay, brown rice waffles.
Well,
Tell
yeah,
us about
why not? It's something me and my kids love to do. Brown rice flour, leftover brown rice, throw it all in there. It still gives you that crunch. And the thing about it is, why not have a gluten waffle? Why not have rice in it? but also rice waffles is a big thing of the American South, right? That leftover rice getting poured into the waffles the next day. So, you know, a lot of people say to me, I celebrated a lot of American South. I celebrated a lot of the Caribbean. Um, yes, I did, because a lot of that is who I am. And remember, the American South made America very rich through rice, right, as a cash crop. So I want people to understand, like, as much as we want to downplay rice in America, the only reason why it's downplayed is because it's not a cash crop right now. If it was a cash crop again, people would be telling you to eat it all day long, eat Carolina gold rice all day long. So that was the whole thing. Let's celebrate this. Let's bring the eyeballs back. Let's pay tribute to African American rice farmers, and let's talk about these dishes that might have been lost on the table.
And you talked to some experts in this book. You have lots of different traditions that you share. Yes, your family history, but lots of other traditions as well. I see you have a conversation with Dr. Jessica B. Harris, who is, all hail Jessica Harris, right? What are her thoughts about rice?
Well, she boils rice. That's what she said her dead mother told her to do. Her thought about rice is really through connectivity of the history. Martha's Vineyard being a place that grew rice at a time through the Dutch coming into the Hudson Valley. A lot of people don't know that. And now when you really read her story in the book, you're going to see in the next 5 years this Northeast revitalization around rice being grown in the Northeast, all through the Hudson Valley, up into above Berkshire's, maybe into Martha's Vineyard again. So she talks about it. Her connection around rice is very interesting, but her tribute is around the history, how deep it is. The deltas, the Delta, the Gullah Geechee Islands of the world paying that tribute.
And I mean, she's a food historian, always doing more and more research and sharing those stories with us. So you're a co-author, Danica. How do you say her last name?
Everybody always asks me this, and she tells me don't butcher it up. Novgorodov,
I think.
Novgorodov. There we go. That's close. Yeah, Novgorodov. Yes.
Novgorodov. So where is she from? Where's that name from?
She's half Chinese and half Russian.
Okay. And so I like that she's helped you to bring these stories to life. And she also tells some of her own stories. How did you come to work with Danica?
I had this idea for this rice book. I shopped it around to many different book agents, and every book agent I was talking to was saying, great, we'll do this 100 recipes. You'll do this around rice. Amazing. And it was like all the same thing. And I didn't like any of the book agents that I was talking to. And it's funny, it just felt like very cookie cutter. And if you know me, I'm not a cookie cutter type of person. And somebody at my kid's school said, oh, I need to introduce you to this phenomenal book agent, Tanya McKinsey. And she's amazing. She's never done cookbooks before, but I think you guys would hit it off. So I get put on this email with Tanya. This woman took my proposal, my notes on my rice book, wrote it a little bit cleaner than I had, all the mumble jumble. And Tanya responded back in a minute.
Wow.
So let's get on the phone. I know what this book should be like. And I get on the phone with her and she starts talking about the book and as if she's writing the book.
Wow.
And it was one thing was important to me too, was like in the culinary space, there isn't many agents that are of color or black. And Tanya was a black woman, which was very important to me to kind of also disrupt the space a little bit. We'd be like, I'm coming with this guy who won a James Beard Award. And then Tanya, but I didn't know that Tanya was very respected. Her firm, she has four Pulitzer winners. So my old book editor from Between Harlem and Heaven calls me and goes, "Oh, you hired Tanya McKinsey? She's amazing. Oh, you're gonna really give me a run for my money on this book proposal." So she introduced me to Danica, who was her one of her clients and said, I have somebody perfect for you. You said you wanted illustrations in your book as well. She's a writer and she's an illustrator.
So
And
she made these beautiful
she
illustrations.
did all the illos. Yeah.
Oh, like I was
Phenomenal.
going to ask you about. They are so lovely.
It's crazy. And she came into FIELDTRIP in Harlem, right around the street from where you live. And she brought me 4 pages of her growing up around rice and said, when you leave, please read this. If you don't want me to write this book, it's all good. But I have a dear love for rice. And she talked about using chopsticks with her family, grabbing individual grain. Her dad's fried rice was always on the table. And it was just a great connection. And we worked extremely well together. She challenged me. I challenged her, which is always, I think, a really good working relationship when somebody can challenge you professionally. And we worked on this book for 3 years.
Well, so yes, let me remind folks, we're here together at Dream Leapers with Harriet Cole, talking to Chef JJ. Right now, we're talking about this beautiful book, The Simple Art of Rice, Recipes from Around the World for the Heart of Your Table. You can tell, first of all, it's a heavy book. There are a lot of pages. Let me tell you, there are 337 pages in this book, and there are beautiful shots and illustrations, amazing stories and recipes. So it's a book. It's not like it's a read as well as a book that you can use to cook recipes.
My inspiration behind it, and I'm a big person, like I look at the North Star. There's a book called Salt, Fat, Acid that did an extremely well job with these illustrations. Nobody ever saw illustrations in a book. And I felt like when you get a cookbook, you get all these pictures, but then there's all this writing in between, and there's nothing that connects you or invokes feeling. And Danica's illustrations, you turn a page and you're like, oh, look at that beautiful rice grain. Oh my God, look at the field, right? And then when you talk about simplicity of recipes, who's the queen of recipe writing when it comes to simplicity is Martha Stewart. So it's like, how can I give you one after another where you feel like you can cook this food, but also when you look at it, you're like, I can make it look like that. And that when I was writing the recipes, I felt like I was Martha Stewart. And then the storytelling is very much like Anthony Bourdain style, where I'm sitting next to these folks and we're having this conversation around food, which just happens to be rice. So that's who I was channeling in many different moments of writing the book with Danica when we were doing different parts. And the head notes are very different than any other head notes you see in cookbooks. They don't really, the storytelling of the head notes. But I learned that from somebody very infamous about storytelling, which is very important.
I'm so good at it.
Which is very important.
Are enchanting. You go in, you feel like you're sitting with whoever these people are that you have met along the way. And it is really important. I didn't even think about that with Martha Stewart. Is at the time that Martha Stewart was everywhere, I was not cooking anything. So I was not looking at her recipes. But I admire her for the lifestyle guru that she is. But I'm looking at these recipes and I'm not afraid of them. And I think that is important, because when you're not a chef, sometimes you can look at recipes and it looks so beautiful and so perfect. The pictures are so perfect, and the way the recipe is described can just feel a little overwhelming for the average person to make. But I don't have that feeling at all when I look at the recipes in this book. They definitely are inviting. And so 3 years, how does Chef JJ make this cookbook over a 3-year period when you also in a 3-year period? So let's talk about in this 3-year period, we had COVID. We had the shutdown and quarantine. You started doing all kinds of philanthropic work, which we'll get to. We'll go into that in a second. But how did you manage to work on a book and complete it, and all the juggle of all the other things, be an entrepreneur, a husband, a father to young children, and just juggle all of these things? How did you do that?
I think that's the reason why it took 3 years. Probably should have taken 2 years. To be honest.
Fair enough.
But it's all the team. I mean, the team is phenomenal. Like my wife, she's a real quarterback of all this. Like, giving me the space to still dream and still be able to work on my craft. And some of it just happened, right? Late nights, early mornings, conversations in between stuff. There was times I was talking to Danica while I was in the kitchen at Field Trip, talking about rice. People thought I was talking to them, but I was talking to her with the earbuds in my ear. So, trying to fit it all in. And then there was a moment of like, okay, it's time to buckle down and I have to put Field Trip to the side and I have to really focus on this and managing time. But the team really was great. Kara was really great. And my chief of staff, Kara, was really great in project managing this. Bia with the pictures, the food stylists, the recipe testers, the recipe writers. There was a lot of people involved in this book. It was a big team. Everybody that believed in the idea with me. And I would say that I got a gut check having a really great editor was we submitted a book at the 2-year mark and he submitted it back. Will submitted it back and was like, this is not what you told me you were going to do.
Ooh.
This wasn't, what is this? This is good, but this is not what we said we were going to do. And then we came back and we reworked a lot of stuff and we really dug deep. That's when those conversations came into play. That's when we redesigned the way the chapters flowed, when it wasn't just like, this is South Africa, this is West Africa. We really started to dive deep into emotion. And I think we wanted to do all those things before. We just didn't have all the time. So that extra year really helped us. And it really shows on the paper. I mean, I have a lot of cookbooks, Harriet. And when I got this one in my hand, I was like, wow.
It's something. It's very special.
Yeah.
It's very special. And you can tell that you put a lot of time, a lot of love and care into it. There's so many voices that are included, and yet it feels really cohesive. I want to turn the page for a second to talk about really it's the expansion of your business that occurred, at least in part, during the most horrific time that we've had in the recent past, when COVID shut the world down. And you have a pivotal story with your wife that really, I want you to share that story. And from the perspective of, when bad things happen and you have a good heart and creativity, amazing things can happen too. So tell us what occurred for you with your wife and how that was pivotal in your understanding of how to move forward.
Yeah, I mean, in COVID was happening. People were leaving. And my wife came home from work one day and told me she didn't eat any food. Did I cook anything? Did I bring anything from my restaurant Field Trip? I said, no, it's 2:30 in the morning. And of course, I cooked something for her at that moment. And I was like, how are you?
She came home at 2:30 in the morning after having been gone all day.
All day. She left 5:30 in the morning.
COVID.
Correct.
And she hadn't eaten all day long.
All day long. And I was like, what's going on? She's like, oh, it's really bad. And this is like early on, like super early on. This is like before news was like reporting a lot of things.
Right.
I think it's really bad. And she works at like a very premier hospital. And this is a space that this is not a place that handles COVID patients. So like if it's bad there.
Right.
Then, and I was saying, I went in the next day to Field Trip about 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, because it was very limited staff. And I said, well, what about if it's bad down there? What is it like in Harlem or Upper Manhattan or the Bronx? So I went to Twitter and I went to a couple of folks. I said, does anybody know anybody who works at Harlem Hospital? I want to send some food up there. A couple of folks got back to me, but one per person in particular said, oh, my aunt Sylvia runs community affairs and you should talk to her. So I text Sylvia. Sylvia's like, oh my God, that'd be amazing. I said, I only got enough to drop off about 30 bowls. She's like, don't worry. If it was 10, it would be fine. Just call this number to this woman. They'll come outside and get it. And I ran up, jumped in a cab, dropped them off, called a woman. And as she's coming out, she's telling me, you need to step back. We will grab it off the sidewalk. And it was like that intense. and then walked back. And then I walked back to Field Trip from Harlem Hospital. And I was on Twitter and I said, "Ah, man, I think I just did one of the greatest things in my life I've ever done." I fed some people in the
And for
hospital.
folks who don't know, that's like about 20 or so blocks, right?
Blocked, right, right.
So, and if we take ourselves back to COVID time, people aren't even outside. It's like the weirdest time ever. Everybody's afraid. Everybody's inside. The people in the hospital are super afraid. And as you say, they're not eating. And I should add, because you didn't say this, obviously the next day you provided food for your wife's floor
As well, exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But and then people just started calling the restaurant, Venmoing me, Zelling me, Cash Apping me to send food to hospitals. And when it occurred, it created this ecosystem of like, I can bring people back to work. We can feed people, frontline workers in need. We were also feeding people that needed food too. Shelters with Harlem Grown we were doing. Ronald McDonald Foundation. I mean, we were feeding a lot of people. Over 200,000 meals we've have fed to folks
from Field Trip.
From Field Trip, out of the small Harlem Field Trip.
I mean, and you guys, like, Field Trip you should come to Field Trip. Now there are 3 of them, but this is the first one in Harlem on Malcolm X Boulevard, Lenox Avenue. It's small. You talk about cranking out 200,000 meals. But like you said, it like out of the generosity of your heart and creativity and taking care of your wife, came all of this bounty. So many restaurants closed. So many businesses closed during COVID. You were able to keep your staff on because of the generosity of others providing the resources so that you could prepare the food.
Correct.
And it just expanded. And then, please tell us, your generosity came to the awareness of a major commercial developer in New York City.
Yeah, Tishman Speyer, development company, owned Rockefeller Center, contacted us and said, "Listen, we don't have any restaurants in here now, and we're looking to revive, and we would love to give you a space in Rockefeller Center." And I was like, "Give me a space?" They're like, "Yeah, we'll work out the deal, the structure." And we worked out a really beautiful deal. And I'm a firm believer is big business helps small business.
Yes.
And they're a big business that helped us along the way. And we were one of the only places open. Like, I remember opening 2 days before Omicron. And then Omicron hit and it was like, hold on, now I got 2 restaurants in the pandemic? Hold on. What's going on here? And now I have all this staff. Like, what am I going to just lay them off? Like, it doesn't work like that. So it was really tough.
I bet. Because people weren't going to work. They were, during quarantine, you weren't allowed to go out. And that lasted for a long time.
I think people just started going back to work. I think they're just figuring out if they want to go back.
Right. And even now, many are going on a hybrid schedule. So they work, a lot of folks are working Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. That has such an incredible impact on every kind of business that's part of the ecosystem of a neighborhood.
I don't think people realize that as like, yes, working from home is a convenience. And this is me talking like as a business owner. But there's people out here that don't have a choice to work from home, right? Nurses, doctors, maintenance people, chefs, cooks, porters, cashiers, grocery store workers, and MTA, like there's people that don't have a choice to work from home. And the stories I hear from those people, because I work in a restaurant, we talk to a lot of people, it's a lot of resentment, right? Like, I was here during the pandemic. I was keeping places going. You were getting your food. You were doing this. And when the other half of the pie doesn't come back to work, it starts to affect those people's jobs. And that's where I want people to really think about is like the ecosystem. Like, yes, working from home is great. It's convenient. You spend more time with your kids. But there are a lot of folks that don't have that luxury. And if you don't come back to work, those folks might not have a job. Because that's just the way the economy, that's just the way it was set up. So,
there's so many things, you guys. I hope that you are listening closely. You are listening right now to Dream Leapers with Harriet Cole, and we're talking to Chef JJ about his career, his restaurants, and his amazing new book, The Simple Art of Rice. JJ, as we move forward this year in 2023, you put another field trip in an incredible location in the Columbia University neighborhood, which is right near where my daughter used to go to grade school. And location. Yes, you have Harlem. Yes, now you have Rockefeller Center. And now the university, Columbia University, that's incredible. How is it going over there?
It's on 114th Street in Broadway. It's going, Harriet, I think you have to build trust in folks. It's something we did in Harlem. It's something that we'll have to do at Columbia University. It is picking up. I think as more and more kids learn about it, they're like, ooh, this is really good. Ooh, where'd this come from? Oh, why didn't we have this before? We're getting a lot of grad kids eating at Field Trip. But it's great. Like, I think there's a lot of connectivity going on. It's like, oh, I used to go to this field trip, but now I can also go to this field trip. And I had this conversation with 5 NYP police officers kept walking into Field Trip Columbia. And I'm like, everything's all right? They're like, oh, we're driving by and we saw a field trip. We typically work on the other side of town and we normally go there. Now we can hit it all the time. So like brought a lot of joy to me that people are excited when they're seeing it on the street. But it's a beautiful thing. I mean, Columbia University, another one of the biggest developers in New York City, to put us in, to offer us that space means a lot. Shows that the brand has grown because there's a lot more I think people don't understand is when you start to work within the big spaces, you have to have all this insurance. You have to be able to supply all this rent money. So it is a risk. I'm all about the risk. I'm all about dreaming. So I've always dreamed about being on Broadway. And I think it never resonated with me because I'm not a true New Yorker. But my Aunt Crystal said to me, you got a business on Broadway. You should be proud. And I was like, it's just Broadway. She's like, you don't understand. When you have a business on Broadway in New York City, you made it, baby. And I was like, okay. And I did some research on that and was like, just thinking about people that a lot of people can't afford to be on Broadway. A lot of people weren't allowed to be on Broadway. So having a restaurant on Broadway means a lot to my family and to us, and to be in front of Columbia University and right there in the midst of a lot of schools and businesses is really great.
Yeah, so good. So in the minute or so that we have left, tell us about your TV show, because it's 5 seasons in. That is an accomplishment on TV One. It's called Just Eats. What are you sharing on that show?
So Just Eats with me, Chef JJ on CLEO TV is a great show. It's 5 seasons. I just tell people it's like Harriet's kitchen table talk. We kick it. Sometimes I bring a guest on. We talk about anything. We kick it. I cook. We eat. And the biggest thing for me is being able to give America and the Caribbean now, because it's in the Caribbean, a different perspective on food. Maybe things that they've seen, maybe things they don't know how to cook, but this whole different perspective on American food, on JJ food, on a view of the food of the diaspora that I'm cooking on the show. And I think that's important when food is such a great connector that we're giving people different perspectives around it.
Well, that's awesome.
And you can catch it every Wednesday at 9/8 Central.
Okay, very good. On CLEO TV.
On CLEO TV, yeah.
Which was created by TV One, right?
Yeah, yes.
That's awesome. Every Wednesday, tune in. It's a great show. You hear it. JJ, the master storyteller. This book is fantastic. Congratulations. And I can't wait to see what's next. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
All right, everybody. I told you, I promised that this was going to be a great interview. You need to pick up your copy of The Simple Art of Rice right now. Recipes from around the world for the heart of your table. Until next time, have a great day and make it count.